All right, pre-AP biology. This is the second video of this particular PowerPoint on population genetics, and I'd like to start off with a little bit of a review from the previous video. I gave this example in the previous video of going out and capturing a population sample of rabbits in Crown Point. And we came up with these numbers, after we did our study. We said that of those 200 rabbits that we collected, 110 of the alleles were dominant alleles, and 90 of those alleles were recessive. And if you weren't really sure on how I got those values, you may want to go back to that previous video and check that out, how we figured that out. But anyway, we went ahead and we determined that the frequencies of the dominant and the recessive alleles, respectively, were 0.55 and 0.45, or 55% and 45%. So again, what that means is that if you took all the genes for this trait, brown fur versus white fur, if you took all these genes and you threw them into a bag and you just mixed them all together and you reached in and pulled one out randomly, there's a 55% chance that you pull out a dominant allele. There's a 45% chance you would pull out a recessive allele. All right, so that's what those frequencies are telling us, how common those alleles are within the population. Now, there's one thing I kind of want you to remember about these two values, P and Q. When you add them together, they should always equal 1, because there's only two alleles for the trait, right? So whatever the frequency of the dominant allele is, whatever the frequency of the recessive allele is, you add those together, you should always get 1 or 100% if you're adding up the actual percentages. All right. So if they don't add up to 1, if you add up your P and Q and it comes out to 2.7, all right, then you did something wrong. All right. So they should always add up to 1. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. So I want us to think about this for a minute. So we did this sample, right? We went out into Crown Point, we gathered up our 100 rabbits, and we came back and we figured out how many of them were homozygous dominant, recessive, and heterozygous. And we figured out these frequencies, right? What were they again? I can't remember. 0.55 and 0.45. So the question here, in 50 years, so let's say we have a time machine and we came back to Crown Point in 50 years, whatever, and we did this same exact experiment. We go out to Crown Point, get our random sample, come back, figure out your frequencies. Do you think those frequencies would stay the same? Or would they be different? Would they be slightly different? Would they be massively different? I mean, what would they be? How would they change? So, would we get the same results 50 years from now or 50 days from now? I mean, take any period of time. I mean, would those results be the same or would they change? Well, that leads us to an interesting scientific principle. It's called the Hardy-Weinberg principle. And what the Hardy-Weinberg principle basically says is that under certain conditions, and I've highlighted that certain conditions, the frequency of the dominant and recessive alleles will stay the same from one generation to the next. So another way to say that is under certain conditions, P and Q will stay the same. They actually will not change. So, in other words, 50 years from now, according to the Hardy Weinberg principle, as long as these conditions are met, then those frequencies are not going to change at all. So, I guess we have to figure out what these conditions are. So, let's take a look at them. All right. The first condition, if P and Q are going to stay the same in 50 years, no mutations can occur within the population. So that means every generation of rabbits that's born, all right, there cannot be any mutations to this particular gene. So ask yourself, is that likely to happen? Is it not likely to happen? Well, you could probably figure it out. Number two, no individual is more adapted to survive than any other. So we've got brown and white rabbits, right? So are brown rabbits or white rabbits more prone to dying compared to the opposite color? Does brown or white give those rabbits any particular advantage to survival? Are there individual rabbits that are born that have a difficulty surviving? Well, according to these conditions, no individual can be more adapted than any other one in order to survive. That condition must be met. So ask yourself, is that condition likely to be met? Number three, the population must be large and stay the same size. So that means no immigration or emigration. That means the rabbits in Crown Point can't go hop over to Maryville, and the Maryville rabbits can't hop over into Crown Point, because if they did, that would break the Hardy Weinberg condition. So the population has to stay the same size, and there can't be any individuals that migrate into or out of the population. So ask yourself, is that likely to occur? Number four, mating must be random. Now think about what that means. You've got thousands of rabbits in Crown Point, right? Do those rabbits just breed randomly, or do they kind of choose their mate? I mean, for example, let's just say that there's a rabbit that's born blind and crippled. He doesn't have use of his back legs. So he's completely blind. He cannot see anything. And he's crippled. He cannot move. According to the Hardy Weinberg, if mating is random, that means that the blind, crippled bunny has just as much chance of breeding as every other rabbit does. I mean, is that true? Because if it were, mating could be random, right? But we all know that that's probably not true. Like some rabbits just don't really have much of a chance to survive. They don't have a chance to mate. When it comes to mating, rabbits are kind of picky. I hate to say it, but the blind, crippled bunny, the rest of the bunnies probably don't want to mate with him. You know, it's just the way that it is. It's kind of sad, but whatever. Now, the thing about these conditions is, can they all realistically occur? Probably not. I mean, there's probably going to be mutations. There probably are going to be some individuals that are better adapted to survive than others are. I mean, think about in the wintertime. Which color is probably more likely to survive, white or brown? Pretty simple, right? The population probably will change size. There probably will be migration. Mating, I'm sorry, but it's probably not going to be very random. I mean, especially in higher order organisms, but in rabbits it might be a little bit, but I mean, even rabbits are picky about who they mate with. There is some pickiness to it. So I mean, these conditions just don't get met. So what that means is that in 50 years, P and Q probably will change. But if these conditions are met, then P and Q won't change. So that's one thing we have to know. All right, I'm going to leave you guys here today with just a sample problem. I want you guys to go ahead and work this out. It says in a population of 100 rabbits, 24 are homozygous dominant, 44 are heterozygous, 32 are homozygous recessive. Go ahead and figure out what the P and Q values are for this particular problem. Go ahead and pause the video here, work the problem out, and see what answer you get, and then come back and I'll tell you. All right, so let's take a look at the answer to this question. All right, so again, we've got 24 rabbits that are homozygous dominant. So what that means is that there are 48 dominant alleles, right? Because 24 of them are big B, big B. When you look at the heterozygous individuals, 44 of them are heterozygous. So that means, oops, so that means that 44 alleles are dominant and 44 alleles are recessive. Then, of course, we have 32 individuals that are homozygous recessive, right? That would mean that 64 alleles are recessive. So now let's go ahead and add these all up, right? 48 plus, oops, plus 44 plus 44 plus 64. Add those up, you should get a total of 200, right? 48 plus 44 plus 44 plus 64, right? You get a total of 200 alleles. Now to figure out what your P and Q are, right? To figure out P, should be a lowercase p, all you have to do is take the total number of dominant alleles. So in this case, 48 plus 44. So that's 92 alleles divided by the 200. So 92 divided by 200. That gives you a frequency of 0.46. Now you could go ahead and calculate Q, but remember, P plus Q equals, oops, where's my equals? There it is, equals 1. So if your P is 0.46, that means your Q must equal 0.54. All right, so hopefully you guys figure that out on your own. This is a problem that you do need to know how to do. All right, we're going to take this a step further in our next video. But if you can handle that for today, you're good to go. All right, guys, have a good day.